You're awake.
Good morning.
Good morning. We were fully prepared to do this talk for one person. And so I'm just going to look directly at you for the rest of this thing, if you don't mind.
We're already above expectations. This is awesome. Thank you.
So Sham's already told everybody our names and our roles, but you don't know which one of us is which, so we'll introduce ourselves. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm Mike McCain. I'm the game director of Battletech.
I'm Chris Klimecky, the lead producer on Battletech.
I'm Mitch Gitelman, the studio manager for Hairbrain Schemes, and I got to work on Battletech.
Chris Aardappel, lead engineer for Battletech.
So what we thought we would do today, oh look, it worked, is to talk to you about how we make missions in Battletech. And our goal for this really, do I hear something weird? Okay, the goal for this is to just sort of show, sort of behind the scenes, like Sham said, how the sausage is made. It's just how many different hands touch a mission before you do. Make sense so far?
They get kind of grimy.
So, they do. And we just want to start with this. That's gross, man. It's Sunday morning, really, because I don't know where you ended up last night. So the important thing for us is really game development is a lot like cooking. It is not a science. It's more of a alchemy. And it's made out of a lot of ingredients. And so we wanted to walk through what those ingredients are. There are two types of missions in Battletech. Mike, you want to tell them what they are?
Yes, there are story missions, and then there are mercenary career missions that are semi-procedural. I think today we're going to be talking mostly about story missions, but procedural missions are also, if you've played the game.
What happened to your butt, man?
Put that there. An important part of the experience, and those are generated with a variety of maps and contract types and encounter types that we sort of mash together into a final mission in the game.
How many of you are like technical type people that understand that kind of stuff? Yeah. So if you're interested in procedural, that's a lot of you. No wonder you're up on a Sunday morning. He was up till 4 figuring out how to talk about modding.
It's true.
If you're interested in how procedural missions work in Battletech, go to gamasutra.com. Our lead engineer, Kiva McGinn. Designer, what did I say? You're a lead engineer?
I am, yes.
Welcome to Sunday morning, kids. I haven't had a hair of the dog.
I think we're doing pretty well.
Actually, if I could get some Stoli in here, I'd really appreciate it. She did a big article on how those procedural missions work, and it really goes in depth. That's not this for today. So,
well, we can't do better than that right now.
I can't see it. I'm going to stand over here for just a second.
The article's really good.
All right. So, story mission recipe, one game setting. Venerable. That would be created by my partner Jordan Weissman 35 years ago. That really helps to make a game that pops with people because they already know what it is. One game engine. Talk to us about that.
Well, we're using Unity for Battletech, and Unity has a lot of benefits as it comes with a lot of features out of the box. It solves some basic problems for us, but when it comes to actual content creation, it only solves the very basic building blocks. It gives you how to create models and animations and things like that. But putting those together into a mission requires an entirely different layer, and that's the tools layer.
Content creation tools.
Which is the next bullet point here. One set of content creation tools. And what's interesting about content creation tools is it's sort of a microcosm of the whole game development cycle that has to happen during game development, but before the development begins, if that makes sense. It's a little bit before.
No.
Okay.
Anybody get that? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. So then here's how it goes: is you start to work on the game, but you have to build tools so that you can build the game. But before you know how fun that game will be, you have to make sure your tools are working. And what never, ever, ever happens is 3/4 of the way through development, you find a bug in your tools.
No way.
Nope, it never happens. And you never have to completely rework
It takes 3/4? No.
Well, sometimes half.
Constant?
Just do it right
continually, yes.
It's easy.
What about the combat system?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, that's on the slide, so you should talk about it. Iterated and balanced.
We're moving on from tools.
Oh, yeah, screw that. I'm done.
Man.
I get bored really fast, guys.
Sorry.
So stay with us. This is lightning.
Combat's a really important part of a mission, as you might expect. It is literally the framework of what you're doing on the battlefield. We started prototyping combat from day one on the project. We probably went through, what, 7 or 8 prototypes in Unity? Yep. We've actually got a slide a little bit later on where we'll show you what one of those early prototypes looks like. It is enlightening. Yeah, so combat, from the beginning of the project, we knew that the combat experience and combat mechanics was going to be the backbone of the experience, and especially with Battletech Tabletop as a reference point, there was a lot of stuff that we wanted to try early on, and so our approach to this is just a prototype with disposable code, throwaway assets, just really quick and dirty. We were literally sitting down and evaluating these prototypes on a day-by-day basis. Andy was our gameplay engineer, Aardappel was working on those a lot too at the time, and we'd just sit down. All right, well, what about this mode of like our initiative system, right? We tried many different versions of that, and we'd play it. We'd play matches. We'd
and then talk and talk and
we'd
talk
talk
about
a lot.
it.
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah. How did that
A
go
lot.
for you, Chris?
It was good. My favorite memory of the prototypes was one of the first ones, because it was literally just red and blue refrigerators shooting at each other. And they're only refrigerators so that they could have facing, and they had one little arm. It was pretty fantastic.
So it's like an urban mech.
It was,
Yeah.
but even slower, but still.
Yeah.
But the important
About
thing
as
here
effective.
is having your combat actually iterated and set before you create your missions. Otherwise, if you're changing how combat works, it can completely invalidate the mission.
Just like those tools.
Yeah. And so there are multiple ways to invalidate a mission and infuriate a mission designer, and I've actually done them all. Mike, why don't you take the next one? It's a story.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't quite read the...
I know, I'm here for you, man.
Story.
Edited story. An important component.
Yes. So it turns out anytime you try to tell a story in a video game, it's way, 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 way too long. Particularly in missions, I think one of the things that makes Battletech unique is the interleaved initiative system that we use, and I think there's a lot of strategic power, tactical options that the initiative system provides. I think most of you are probably familiar if you're here to some degree, but we have 5 different phases of initiative, and faster units go first, and then we go down to the next phase, and medium mechs go, and then heavy mechs, and so on. And so that makes combat really rich and interesting, and you can reserve your units down to act later. And so as you get deeper into the game, there's more strategic options available to you through that system. It also means that we have a limited set of pacing and storytelling tools in missions, because each round we have to go through all those phases. So we have to be very careful about how we unveil story through a mission, because there's a lot of different ways the player could be experiencing time in that mission, if that makes sense. So Andrew will write a draft of a mission, and it's got all this stuff, and we put it in, and then we just keep on.
Then we cut.
And then we cut half.
Well, and then there's 2 types.
Sorry, Andrew.
No, you're doing great. There's a lot of chopping that goes into a video game story, but there are 2 ways that we that we transmit story within a mission, right? Interrupt and async.
Yeah, so we have different modes of dialogue, and we have a limited ability to sequence events on the battlefield, and we try to just make everything flow as
Shitty?
That's, yeah.
Technical
I was
term?
looking for a more positive,
This will
twist
be on
on
your
that.
glossary. It'll be on the test later also. So.
We try to be not too invasive with the story flow in story missions, and I think there's probably missions where we're more or less successful at that, to be honest, but the goal is always, let's keep combat moving, let's keep the scenario clear and easy to read and understand as a player, what am I supposed to be doing? I think I'm jumping ahead to one of the later
while still keeping the clarity of sort of where the story is going, right?
And maintaining those tools, one of the tough things is you do recreate that. We get that game engine running. We get those tools running. We have a combat system we're happy with, and then the engineering team knows how it works, right? It's such a good feeling that you know how it works. And then design and story comes in, and they want to change everything on the fly at any time. And
well, because we need the dropship to land here.
Right, at this time, and the dialogue to work in this order and not interrupt the other camera sequences.
You sound a little pissy right now.
Really? No, it's The challenge is
an
what
observation.
gets me up in the morning. Is the challenge, yes. But that's a huge part of keeping those tools up to date.
Well, is just finding
okay.
out what he's going to ask
That's
for.
just the text.
Next time, we're just going to do it all right the first time.
The first
yeah,
time.
get it right the first time.
Oh, this is also on the test. I got to tell you, having done game development for 25 years, and one of our designers, Kevin Maloney, says this: the best way to make a game is to do it perfectly the first time.
Yes.
Good lesson for everybody there.
That's true, right, Sean?
That'll also be on the test. So, Klimecky, talk to us about musical score, please. Chris is a musician. He didn't do the music on this game.
I didn't.
But he did hire the composer, so
yeah,
nice job.
He's the composer and the audio designer is actually drummer for my band. So there's that.
It's incestuous.
It is. But no, audio's critical, and we'll sort of go through all the points here. But audio tends to be on the back end, right? They're reactive to what's already going on the screen or with the story, trying to bring out the emotions that are sort of implanted in there by the designers. But we often say that if someone doesn't comment on the audio, that's when it's successful, right? It just supports everything and makes it work. But at the same time, John Everest's soundtrack for this game is absolutely tremendous. You can
find it on SoundCloud. Shout out to
John. Got to
John.
give a shout out to John, and that is worth just listening to, straight up by itself. But I think when you hear it within the missions, and especially the story missions where we did really construct the flow and in the tools, made it so that we could transition certain pieces of music to really intensify certain moments. It makes a huge difference.
And now the
Chris
next
was
bullet
being
point
kind
on.
a second ago. He said audio is usually on the back end of things. More often in the office, that's called the ass end of production, and they're very good sports about it.
I'm really proud I coined that term, ass end of production. Thank you. Chris, as the lead producer, also gets the next bullet point for the recipe, and that is time.
Oh my God, time. It always seems like the enemy. You sort of, can we be friends with time and sort of make it work
Time is the
for
fire
us.
in which we burn.
So.
Actually, well, it's stolen from a poem.
What time?
Time is the fire in which we burn.
Fire in which we burn.
Time
Gotcha.
is the school in which we learn. This is the culture portion of our morning.
So, quick producer 101 here, right? Time, cost, quality. We're always balancing those three. And if you want more quality, it's going to cost more and take more time. Or, it sort of becomes a choose two. And the third one's going to suffer, right? So we're always balancing how much quality can we get for how much cost, for how much time. And time is usually the one that is unchangeable, right? And then that's when you start cutting scope, or you never want to. We never want to sacrifice quality, right? We have very high standards. We want to give everyone sort of above expectations. So.
And that's why we eat at our desks.
Yes, there is that. Sometimes.
All right. And then the last one's also for you. They say it takes a village, and to create one mission in a game,
all right.
takes a village.
So this is my favorite one because I get to actually talk about the team. Producers are often associated with schedule and budget, but in my mind, it's really the biggest point is team care and maintenance. And you maybe haven't watched the credits in Battletech, but I would encourage you to do so because we actually put a lot of care into the credits, put a lot of care into this team and the people and the roles that they did. Because you might think, we're talking about a mission design here, talking about mechanics, right, and functionality. But it's really the people. The people behind it is what you always have to keep in mind, because it's not just a mission designer, right? There is the tools engineer. There are the writers. There are usually for even a single map, 2, 3, maybe even 4 environment artists have touched that and made different building blocks. The audio designer, the composer, QA has gone over and over this. They have played this mission, 100 times more than any player will, and of course, 99% of the time of that broken mission. People say, "Hey, play games for a living." QA.
That's why we're going to make it right the first time.
Play broken games so that it's actually good by the time you see it. So really, most of the team has touched and had some part. AI. We got to mention AI engineer, right?
If you think about what goes into a mech, like the entire art team.
Yeah, the entire art team is
textured, modeled, rigged, animated. Created visual effects for every single weapon in the game. game.
Yep. So there's an amazing number of people, with 45 people on the team, have touched some part of every single mission. So it's good to just remind yourself of that. And please do watch the credits. There's some fun shots of this dork in there as Lord Commander and whatnot. So a lot of fun in there.
So these are some of the elements that go into the recipe, the ingredients. Beyond that, Mechs.
Lots of
Mechs, right? And you can't discount that. So as we go through our recipe, we're going to talk about the different courses and stuff. Here's the mise. You want?
Wasn't
Well,
that
I shaved
funny?
You got a hit there.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. What are you laughing about? The hipster seal of approval? Oh, you think that's actually supposed to be McCain, but yeah, no.
Yeah, but I shaved. So
We've always felt that Shams is a big part of the product, and what's nice is he went home last night instead of doing karaoke and actually played Battletech and lost to Wolverine. So story beats. Why don't you talk about that for a minute, Mike?
Story beats.
Review the story. I'll talk about that for a minute since I wrote the deck. The way it works is, Andrew, our lead writer, writes out the entire story kind of ad nauseum. It was at least 40 pages long. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we break that down. Actually, Mike often breaks it down into mission by mission. This is the information we have to get out. And again, in a story mission, it's very different than in some other types of missions. But you break down those story beats into these individual missions so that we understand the flow that the player needs to go through. And then from there, the design team starts whipping up all sorts of different encounter types, I guess is the right word, a diverse set of mission concepts.
And I think every game has different form factors of storytelling within the experience. This was true in Shadowrun. I think it's even more true in Battletech. There's the narrative that needs to take place and both to advance the story and to just make sense of what you're doing on the battlefield in a particular mission. And then outside of that, there's we have group conversations with your crew, with Kamea, cinematics, and just even loading screens. Like every stage of that player experience is part of the grander narrative roadmap for the game. And one of the interesting things is each of those form factors is very specific in what it does well and what it doesn't do well. And so we'll often find on a mission, we're trying to have this grand beat of I don't know, I forget specifics, but there's at least a couple times where this is going to happen in the mission. Oh no, that's not going to happen in the mission. Let's put that in a cinematic because that'll be a much richer experience for the player. And in a cinematic, it can be epic, whereas in the mission, it ended up being kind of frustrating because it's taking the player away from actually playing the game.
Yeah, and at one point we were working on the cinematics, and I remember I wrote a cinematic script, sort of this epic sort of Game of Thrones cinematic script, and Mike completely threw it out, and he did exactly the same thing I wanted in one image. Oh, okay. You should be the game director. That would be awesome. Anyway,
I hear pictures worth 1,000 words, Mitch.
Yeah, thank you. I should have learned that a long time ago. So we create these mission concepts, for is this a capture, is this a destroy, whatever it is, and then we apply it to these different story beats. And so we created a whole layout for what each mission in the game is in theory supposed to be before we ever touch the editor. And everybody comments on that kind of thing. That's very important in our studio. Collaboration is absolute king. So regardless of your role in the studio, you don't have to have the word designer next to your name or anything. Everybody gets a chance to comment on the story, and that's a very big part of it. And so we actually changed the story dramatically multiple times because of feedback from the art team, the engineering team, QA, everybody, right? And so then we apply that to the story beats, and then once you got that, now you start whiteboarding. And it's a matter of, okay, I think the player will start over here, come in here, there's some mountains over here, and it's pretty much this fast. And our whiteboard is actually on a table that everybody sits around. It's kind of like a war room from an old World War II.
Have a couple of mech minis on that table, too. You can shove them around and get a feel.
It actually is a lot like the Battleship sort of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things about our studio, we're very, very lucky from a story point of view because our lead writer is also a designer and an artist. And so he laid out the first draft of every story mission in the game himself to get that sort of, to get the flow and get what was in his head out onto the page before handing it off to a level designer that was really going to flesh it out and take it the rest of the way. And so we feel real lucky about that. That's sort of an advantage I think we had. The appetizer course, the mission map. So we were just talking about white boxing a mission. Who can talk about what a white box is? Does anybody know what a white box is? Bueller? Shams, you don't count, you're a game developer? No? All right, Shams?
It's an ass-ugly version of the mission. It's not trying to be any sort of sense of place or art. It's a representational mock-up where we can quickly play through the beats of the experience and see, like, how does the timing work? How does the combat work? Is the premise for this mission engaging or not?
And to quickly iterate. I mean,
Exactly.
that's the whole point, is you don't want to put pretty art in there and then, you know, have to send, you know, oh, I changed the thing to flow this way, and then have the artist have to go and redo all their pretty stuff, right?
Or this mission takes place on the moon. No, it's not. I meant a desert.
Yeah.
Like those refrigerators we had in combat prototypes, this is the same kind of prototype we do for the mission itself.
And by white box, we literally mean sometimes obstructions are little white boxes.
Just cubes.
Right?
Sometimes. Most of our terrain system at this point is fairly, the base of our terrain is automatically generated. So when we talk about a white box, for most of the development, that actually looks like it's in world, like it has the base terrain for the biome. It has the trees and whatnot. It's just if we're adding a building we don't have, the building is a refrigerator until it is told otherwise.
Taste for timing and distances. Yeah, you were just talking about that for a minute, Chris.
The iteration and
Yeah, the timing and the distances. You know, moving across the map, seeing how long it takes to get from one place. You know, how many turns.
Yeah.
It's a turn-based game. You know, when we were doing the Mech Commander game, timing was very different because it's a real-time strategy game. So to get from this time point to this point, you just turn around and you're there. Here in a turn-based game, you know, it's like how many turns does it take to get there, and how many turns is too long from a pacing point of view. Does that make sense?
And not only across the whole thing, but each phase of the mission, like how long until you actually, you know, meet your enemy? Do you give, you know, do we, in this particular mission, do we want to give them the player time to you know, sort of devise their exploration and find a way around the map, or do we want them to engage right away? And so, you know,
Be tempted by that secondary objective.
Exactly, and having those different
That truck they shouldn't chase and Smith on.
beats of the mission.
Oh, you can get those guys. Don't worry about those trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stomp 'em.
They're easy.
Stomp them.
Oh, I didn't think of stomping them.
Stomp them.
That was stupid of me.
No. You did the right thing. You got to let those trucks go.
That's what I did. So from there, once the lead writer sort of lays out a mission kind of roughly to show the designers what he's looking for, then the designer takes the mission and starts roughing it out, getting the timing in, etc. Once we're comfortable with that, Mike often leads a review. We'll talk about reviewing in a minute. And from there, once we get sort of an approval go with it, then the lead designer of the mission talks to the lead environment artist and walks him through, in this case, how it works and what the vision for the mission is. Occasionally, you do concept art for individual story missions?
Not really concept art in particular. I think most of the time the map art team was iterating on that. I know, you know, as far as reviews go, we for a while during production, we had a morning. Basically, every morning was after stand-up, we'd get together and have a review, like myself and Kiva, our lead designer, and Mitch was there, and then whoever else was involved in the map would come in, and we'd basically just try to look at one or two missions every day to try to keep that cadence going and try to get a regular, like, smaller chunks of feedback rather than like, I've been working on this mission for 3 weeks, what do you think? And I think that was really successful, just to have a more informal review loop with different designers and artists on the team.
And so what happens is after the art team, the environment team takes the mission and actually makes it look pretty, they hand it back to the designer, and the designer has to take a couple of days to make sure that the art team actually didn't break the mission. And that happens. That's a standard thing. There's no animosity.
Or anyone else. As the AI changes, you know, all of a sudden your guys are going in different directions.
There's a concept.
There's all kinds of things that can break the mission.
Does it still work? Does it still work? And that's just part of the whole deal. And so we review it to find out what broke. And luckily, we all work in an open floor plan, and so a lot of the times you'll hear, up, and you know what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
all it
hard
takes.
to overstate just how like mind-bogglingly complex games are. Like there's 45 people and everybody's got a different part, but on top of that, like every little thing that goes into that mission there's some code running here, there's all these assets that are being called on. And so no matter what, like we're always trying to keep things sort of in sync and stable, but it's chaos theory. Like there's always going to be something you forgot, or there's a bug that we couldn't anticipate, and so.
Or fixing one bug breaks something else.
Exactly.
Very
and so
common.
game development is never about preventing those things. It's just about trying to, as much as possible, schedule enough time for the issues that do come up, and then trying to chart intelligent solutions to problems as they.
It's not a straight line, right?
No.
It's not, you don't go from A to B. It's all over the place, and you're just sort of trying to keep it heading in generally the right direction.
Yeah.
That's completely accurate. We also use one of those like chat programs, so we're constantly, in our case, hip chat, so we're constantly talking to each other saying, I'm in this screen right now, don't touch anything for the next 5 minutes. So that happens a lot. Chris, why don't you talk to us about what we're seeing on screen right now?
So this is the Unity editor. It's mostly the normal Unity editor. If you're familiar at all, there's the scene window, which is the design view of the map. It gives you full 3D control, zoom in and out and around. You can change it to 2D. You can change the way that the meshes render, get all kinds of interesting information in that view. On the far left is all the individual objects that are in that given scene. Below that is the project, which is just a dump of assets that are used to build the mission itself. And then on the right, there's this concept in Unity of the inspector. And the inspector is whenever you have an object highlighted. I can't quite tell what's highlighted here, but you get details on that object. And this is where we build a lot of our tools, is into this inspector, because you can write your own edit windows, you can write your own inspector windows. And so a lot of the things that we've had to do in Unity is just extend the editor to give us the degree of control that you want. And then you can also see those dots there on that line. Those are some splines that we're using, and those are used to create ramps, to create roads, and lots of things like that. So the tools, it's many layers of tools. Sometimes it's a standalone tool that's outside the editor. Sometimes it's in the editor. Sometimes it's in 3D space, and sometimes it's just a wall of text. But there's lots of layers to it.
It's all fuzz to me, man.
Yeah, well, to most people. But this is what you're used to seeing. So this is our test mech. This atlas right here is in every scene. So an environment artist can lay out a map. He can build his buildings. Then he hits play at the top there, and you just drop into the atlas, and he has a hilarious run animation, and he can jump, and it doesn't move at all like a mech, but it gives you a lot of mobility to move around the map and see what you've built, and then see whether or not it is looking and feeling like what you want.
So we have a lot more slides I want to roll through real fast just to give you a sense of what's going on, so we'll try and be expedient. We'll see what happens. The protein, we talked about the tasty tactical combat already, I think. Yeah. Right, so we're good there. But it is the protein. It's sort of the meat. Now, the sauce is the rich story content. I believe we talked about that. The key thing with this first bullet point, and it's so often, in my experience, the level designer has all sorts of ideas on what you're supposed to be doing, but transmitting that to somebody who's not inside their head actually is one of the larger challenges. And being able to say, do this, do this, do this, and then it turns out almost invariably they say, oh, by the way, and kill all the mechs. Right, we had that in the last. You know what? We should really kill all the mechs. After laying out all the stuff, and I've seen this over and over again in game development. It's so interesting. The tactical combat is good, right? The environment map is good, and forget everything else. It's just like, okay, the moment-by-moment gameplay is cool, but after a while, it just doesn't matter unless there is a why. Like, we did a game once called Crimson Steam Pirates, and we did a prototype, which is really, it was this little ship combat thing. It was actually pretty cool. It's for iOS. And it was actually turn-based, but simultaneous action. And we just had the thing where you had to move your ship into a cove and then move it back out again. And that was the goal of the mission. But then my partner Jordan came up with the idea of you were trying to raid this town in order to steal a dress for a girl. And all of a sudden the mission became fun because it was all about getting this green dress for a redhead. And he was very excited about that. So that's a primary motivating factor in a lot of his games. And iterate for immediacy, pacing of information. That's just this constant thing. And that goes back to that interrupt dialogue, async dialogue, where we pop up things on screen for you, the reader. Somebody says, keep going faster, which actually motivates me like hell. You're going too slow. That's actually Chris most of the time. This Chris over here.
We're going too slow. Come on.
All right, so review and iteration. Mike was talking about that earlier, where every morning we would get together, review the mission map. I can't see a damn word. It is not glamorous, and being able to take feedback is one of the primary things we look for in anybody in our studio. If you can't take feedback, you don't belong with us, because believe me, you're going to get it, and you're going to get it from everybody, because collaboration really is king. When we're thinking about making a mission, it has absolutely nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with the tools. It's only about you playing it at the end and figuring out what the hell we meant by all of it. So you review with the chef. I was a sous chef in this case.
And you know, I think again, it's just hard to overstate how complex games are. And so everything in a game, like almost everything, is bad before it's good. The game itself is bad before it's good. And there just isn't a game that like comes out of the oven and it's perfect. It's like there's too many variables for any one person to have correctly predicted. And so it comes out of the oven, and hey, I went with the cooking metaphor.
Yeah. That was awesome.
And then the way it becomes a good game is you keep on reacting to it, you keep on challenging your assumptions and admitting when your assumptions, you know, before you put it in the oven were wrong, and just until it's good. And
taste.
It is a lot of hard work, and that's, you know, like Mitch said, that's the unglamorous part, but that's what it really takes to.
No,
I would add to that you know, it's not just having sort of armor, but to be able to roll with the problems, right? Your bug list, we have, you know, it can be, how shall we say, exhausting, overwhelming, crushing. Okay, these are good words.
Mind-numbing.
You know,
seemed a little.
The bug list.
There's this trend here.
Yeah, it's part feedback, it's part bugs, it's part, you know, suggestions, and you know, we prioritize those things. But the lists are long, and you have to be able to sort of navigate through that. And you know, anyone who would get like offended by, oh, a bug, what, you know, that my code does not have bugs, was right. No, you know, you have to continue iterate and be able to manage these bug lists, and that's one of my jobs, and anyone who's on the leads team is to help prioritize and help people sort of through these lists of tasks and bugs to just keep making it better. You know, we don't always see the numbers go down, but I always say what's comforting is even though the numbers don't go down in total, we're seeing the game improve with each sort of pile of you know, bugs that get cleared out of Jira. So.
You want to add something there? Or you just want to be happy about what he said?
I'm just glad that the game keeps getting better. That's the part that
because otherwise, like if you're just counting the numbers,
You know, Mike said something, and he says this to the team often, but I want to hit this just a little bit harder. A game is bad until it's good is a huge thing, because especially for newer game developers, greener game developers, you know, for me, I've always said that games are made with faith and will, right? And a lot of the time, and I've seen this time and again, your team will actually lose faith at some point during the process. It's nearly inevitable that they will lose faith while you're making the game.
It's the point in the voyage where you can't see where you started, and you can't see where you're going. You're surrounded by water, and you're not sure.
Water's the ocean of buglet.
It is.
And there's a storm a-coming, kids.
Exactly.
And it's called
But you just have to keep sailing.
And so you have to have faith in the game concept. You have to have faith in your fellow team members. And then it's just about the will to keep moving forward, whittle down that bug list, and get to that next stage. Which takes us to the next screen. Oh, this is that
prototype we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so this is where we started. Can you tell us what this is?
Post-refrigerator. This is when all the mechs were king crabs.
It was a fun phase.
The nicer prototypes,
yeah, the deadliest catch version of Battletech. So again, we had these just quick and dirty mock-ups in Unity. Like this was the reason you see some terrain here is not because we cared about what the prototype looked like. It's because we were trying to start prototyping our terrain tools as well during this process, and having them actually integrate with the prototype. So Yeah, this was one of the later ones, I think, and we had, again, many builds like this, and we just kept on doing it until we felt confident enough in our foundation that we wanted to move forward with development.
This is one of the most exciting parts of game development there is, right? There's the concept phase, which some people think is fun. I kind of just like,
I
let's
like
get
that part.
Yeah, of course you do. I like this, which is all about action.
Building something, yeah.
It's about building something, getting it on screen, and then go, and just iterate as fast as you can.
Well,
in this
is
little
where
strike
you
team.
figure out that you've actually got something fun. There's something, you know, after enough prototypes, you say, yes, we've got, this is the thing that is
this
fun.
This one sucks less.
This one sucks less. This is fun. Let's go with this.
And you can see, I think, a fair amount of those concepts are still in the final game, like the UI and the movement.
And the facing, and yep.
So, real fast, we call these sweeteners, but it's really not true. Visual effects, sound effects, music, and mood. A really important thing, you have 4 senses, right? Touch. With a PC game, there's no rumble in the controller, so that removes one. So you have sight and you have sound, and that's it.
Yeah, we ain't smelling anything.
Taste
yeah,
your PC games. Typically,
anything.
I wouldn't recommend it, despite the cooking
That's all
metaphor.
for you young
Smells
gamers at
sort of
home.
up to you.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
MechWarriors do not smell good.
No, they do not.
It's all that heat
It's a heat. Yeah, it's the heat.
It's amazing. A lot of people, you know, Mike was talking about music being and sound being on the ass end of game development. Absolutely true. But it's amazing how all of a sudden the game is better once you put it in. It's like, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, I don't think this weapon does enough damage. And then all of a sudden you put a big ass sound effect. It's like, wow, you really increased the damage of that weapon. It's like, no, man, we put a sound effect on it. And there are times, and this is a true story, I've had designers in the past, I won't say on which game, Shadowrun first-person shooter, who said this weapon is not dangerous enough, and so what I did is that I had our audio director increase the volume on the weapon by 10%. It's like, yeah, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. Now I'm putting people down. Anyway, visual effects.
No, so on that topic, like we talked about whiteboxing earlier, and I think that is a very valuable tool, but there is a pitfall in it, and it's exactly that. Like when you're whiteboxing, you are not reacting to the map as a sense of place, like the art team and the audio and whatever else hasn't gone in. And it's actually, I believe it is impossible for anybody to completely objectively review the white box experience and sort of properly anticipate all the sweetening being applied. And so your emotional reaction to an experience always changes with visual, with audio. Like these are like critical drivers of our psychological reactions. And so we try not to go too far with, oh, the white box is perfect or it's horrible, we have to redo it, because there is this final step of it's all going to come together when it feels real to the player. And we're players, you know?
And to that point, sort of pro tip after many years of game development, actually getting audio involved earlier in the process really does make a big difference, because not only to help sort of create the entire mood even of prototypes and earlier phases, but the audio needs iteration as well, and leaving that to the end really doesn't get you the quality of audio that I think you know, we've learned to you know, we want in our games to have you know, high quality audio, and getting those people in earlier really makes a huge difference.
It does, absolutely. One of the cool things working with our audio director and our composer also is there's been, I think, if I'm correct, this is the 21st Battletech game made. And I had the pleasure to work on like 5 or 6 of them. And you would think that's a negative. It's like, oh, it's already been done. But instead, we look at it as inspiration. So we're able to go back to MechWarrior 2 and stuff like that, which, you know, we all have this sort of, you know, emotional memory of. And to be able to go, yeah, how do we bring that feeling forward into the 21st century? So it's, I got to tell you, working on something like Battletech that's been around for 35 years is one of the biggest honors of probably any of our careers, because we get to be part of gaming history and to sort of carry it forward. It's a big deal to us. I think we've talked about music a fair amount, really, and the last is mood. And by mood, why don't you talk about what the hell mood is?
Yeah,
Mike?
so Lee is our lighting wizard artist, and he's put together an incredible system that allows us to apply basically all of the lighting, time of day, fog, everything atmospherics, everything that goes on top of the map visually. We have in a modular mood system, so we can apply the foggy nighttime mood to a map, or we can just switch that out with Martian sunset, which looks weird if you're not on a Martian map, but the point is, by making that so modular, that's another way we can quickly, completely change the tone of a map. A map that you're playing with a certain mood and musical track versus a completely different mood and musical track can feel significantly different to the player, and so that's just one more tool in our toolkit to deliver the overall experience.
And that's the overall experience right there. Oh, see what you did there? Look at that.
Comes out of the oven, it's all perfect.
But yeah, totally. Yeah, nothing to see there.
2.5 years in the oven.
Yeah, it's one of those slow fire wood ovens or whatever.
Thank you, a foodie boy. So that concludes the sort of pre-prepared portion of our discussion here, and so it's time for some Q&A if you're actually awake to ask us any questions.
I'm actually going to start because I have 2 questions of my own. I'm going to. So first question, there was a joke there about an underwater mission.
It was a joke about what?
An underwater mission.
An underwater mission. Yeah.
Was that actually a thing?
No, that's not a thing. Mr. Weissman occasionally comes up with ideas. That's like, fuck no, man, I'm not doing that.
Okay, so that was never considered to be an actual mission, like a one-off kind of Scooby-Doo
In success,
mission.
all things are possible, Shams.
Yeah, of course. So my second question is, because I play a lot of Battletech right now, did you guys consider having at the end of the mission kind of a recap, allowing you to replay, because the game is turn-based, right? And while you have this interleaved phases where people are fighting, the action is actually happening in real time if we'd be looking at the battlefield being there. Did you consider giving us a way of replaying the entirety of battle through the rounds just as a continuous flow?
There was a JIRA ticket on that.
One of the prototypes, actually, we started work on a scrub, so you could scrub through the turns. All that data is recorded, but we just
time, money, quality.
Yeah, exactly.
In success, all things are possible.
Would it be possible to do through a mod?
Would it be? Oh, when's your mod talk?
That would be very difficult to do through a mod.
Okay.
Yes.
But not impossible, and that's a challenge to you, Internet. I'm looking at you. All of the Internet. Looking at, boom, right there. So yeah, we thought of that. Who else has a question out there?
Morning.
Morning.
Which mission was the hardest to cook?
The first couple.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Anytime you're trying to both introduce mechanics, introduce game world ideas and story ideas, like those missions have like 5 times as much stuff that they're trying to do. But if you just try to cram all that in, it's not fun. And so trying to get the balance of here's the right amount of information, tutorialization, and storytelling, but there's still something fun and engaging for the player to do is absolutely the most challenging part, I think.
That cycle of a mission being functional and breaking. And I think mission 2 broke more than any other mission in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because also trying to do all that stuff pushes the tools to their limit and beyond in those first couple of missions.
And so if you could do that, then you feel like you have the rep. If you do the hardest thing first, right, then it's a lot easier to do the other stuff.
That's part of maintaining those tools. Is mission 2 is also one of the oldest, and so we kept advancing the tools. And poor mission 2 just.
And despite how many times we've iterated it, like there's still stuff I would keep on working on. But it's
every single time
you always want to keep on going.
At some point, it's done.
To his desk, you gotta be done eventually.
Ship it.
But I'd walk up to his desk. He's always playing that same damn mission. Another question.
First off, I love the difference between the 2 kinds of missions, because you've got very different play styles. Because the procedurally generated missions, you kind of take your time, do your thing, unless it's one of those ones where it's a 2-skull, but then it turns out that there's some reinforcements behind. And,
surprise!
Yeah, but the story missions, you always feel a lot more pushed. You've got to keep on keeping on. But the other thing is the secondary objectives. In most games, especially turn-based games, I find secondary objectives just to be objectives. You know, I get them all, every time, first attempt. Now, liberate Smithon.
I knew you were going
that
there.
thing was hard.
Yeah.
Real hard. And the first time, that was the first time in the whole game where I just had to let those objectives go. I mean, was that designed to be that hard? Or was that just like an accidental super challenge?
It's a combination of things. I think I would say partly intent and partly changes.
Well, it's also very dependent on how you play the game, right? It's at a point in the game where if you've taken a lot of time to sort of build up your company and your pilots, then you can make it easier on yourself, right? But if you have sort of plowed right through and really tried to, get into,
Go through the story
it's
as
so
fast as you can.
tempting
Yeah.
when a story mission comes up. I want to play the story mission. It's you know there's something dramatic going to happen. But if you rush that, it definitely can be harder, right? So we have to balance that as well.
Well, we'll
About
close
the
out with
trucks
this
in
because we're over
particular,
time.
the trucks in particular, I would say they were always intended to be bait to distract you from the main objective.
Yes.
We maybe didn't intend for them to be quite so hard.
We did give the objective, you give sort of a mission objective to your game designer. In this case, we said, we want this mission to be memorable.
Success. Yeah.
All right, that's our time. Thank you guys very much for your questions. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Go grab him and ask a question.